YouTube, how's it going? The Goat House is back. Season's right around the corner. There's a few things I wanted to get to before the season starts, before the in-season content. I wanted to get my full season predictions out there. We'll do that very soon. I wanted to rank every offense and every defense from 32 to 1 as well. Starting right here, right now in this video with from 32 to 1 with offenses for the 2022 season. So excited about this. We'll do defenses next and the full season predictions and in-season content next week. Cannot wait for it. Join us, like, subscribe to notifications on. Follow us on Twitter. Live talk during games, of course. News, rumors, updates, more. Rocking that Chiefs chain today, as you can see. The GLD shop. Check it out. There's a link down below. They got all kinds of these NFL jewelry, chains, bracelets, everything you can think of there. They got it. Real gold, very affordable. Definitely affordable with my 33% off code you see underneath me. Use code GOAT for that. Some cool stuff. Check it out. Some NFL players wear their stuff as well. It's all over their Instagram page. You can check it out. So ranking every offense from 32 to 1 for this upcoming season. So basically predicting the upcoming season. I got the Seattle Seahawks at 32. They have weapons. They obviously have the weapons, but the QB play holding them back. And they almost wanted to go Drew Lock just a week ago, but sloppy play with the turnovers. Then you got to go Geno Smith, who maybe doesn't have enough juice. Kind of plays it safe a bit. So I think the quarterback play and the offensive line play brings them to the bottom here because again they do have weapons, but if you combine the quarterback play and the offensive line play for every team, Seattle might be on that dead last on that alone, and that it's kind of the most important thing when we're talking about offense. It is the most important two things when we're talking offense. Texans at 31, which I think they're getting there. Not a lot going on with them. Whether it's good or bad, honestly. I mean, it's not a good offense. Obviously, we don't expect it to be yet. But there isn't a lot of negatives, like a giant hole here and there. They're just kind of not good enough in pretty much almost every spot there. But there's guys that are kind of getting there, and they have Brandon Cooks, they have Laramie Tunsil, but you just wish they had more consistent weapons. It's kind of just Cooks out there, and then I'm a believer in Dameon Pierce. Nico Collins could be solid. They just signed O.J. Howard. That's solid. But there's just not enough juice in there. Maybe second time I use that word. They're pretty balanced though. Like I think they'll be able to run the ball okay for kind of a bottom tier offense, and maybe pass the ball okay at times for a bottom tier offense. It's just they're a lot different from these other teams because the other teams have more glaring positives and glaring negatives. I don't think they have glaring of either. The Giants are next. They have weapons. You see at the receiver position and Saquon Barkley, quarterback play, and you kind of could put turnovers in here. Don't really trust it fully. And could it be better? Sure, Daniel Jones could be a little bit better, but I still don't trust that quarterback play and the consistency of it. They made the tackles better. Andrew Thomas developing, and then Evan Neal. I'm a big fan of Evan Neal, even though he's not going to play flawless right away. The interior offensive line could definitely struggle, though. They claimed Tyree Phillips. That was just a little bit ago, and that actually could help them a little bit. He could eventually find his way starting on the team. Durability is definitely concerning. You look at some of those receivers. You look at Saquon Barkley, and you look at him, even Daniel Jones there. So durability definitely an issue there. Just so many of those games where they're just so limited scoring wise. Maybe relying on Barkley because they can't distribute the ball in the passing even though they have weapons. But then Barkley, you don't want to overdo with him because of the durability. And it's just not enough there, and it's really on Daniel Jones taking care of the football, not losing them games. Because last year the defense had them in games or had games won, and then you see Daniel Jones or the quarterback play take it away almost. So that's tough. The Bears at 29. Run game, and it could be a unique run game because Justin Fields is a very solid running quarterback, a mobile quarterback, obviously, especially getting outside. Could we see some read option type plays? I think we will. We'll see a lot of bootlegs, and you see him kind of getting outside and play action on those bootlegs, and like defense can be like, is he going to throw? Is he going to run? You kind of got to worry about both of that. But what really weighs them down is there's some inexperience, and really the weapons and the offensive line. Justin Fields could be a special quarterback. He's got to get there. He doesn't really have the help right now with the weapons and the offensive line. So that really weighs them down. You kind of can compare them to the Jets. Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson's not going to start right away, but whether it's, Zach Wilson versus Justin Fields, maybe I believe in Fields at this given time a little bit more because of injuries and what we saw recently in preseason is not a whole lot to go off of. there for obvious reasons, but because they're in their second year, they didn't start full games every game last year. But the difference in the Jets' offensive line, it really isn't a positive or negative right now. I think overall it's a positive because I think it's getting better. I like where it's heading, and their weapons got a lot better. So that's kind of the difference there. Maybe between the Jets and the Bears. But I do worry about QB play a little bit for the Jets, even if it's Flacco or Wilson. That's kind of the only thing because I like their coaching. I like, there's a lot of times that the blame kind of goes to play calling when an offense struggles, but it wasn't the case last year for the Jets. I like the playbook, designs, calling. So I'm pretty confident with those things. It's just the quarterback play. That's really what it is because the offensive line's getting better as well. Lions will be next. Like their weapons, they actually have weapons at receiver, especially when Jameson Williams comes back. They have a good group of running backs as well. Offensive line looks very solid on paper. It needs to play that way because last year it didn't play quite to where we thought it could, but at the same time, it wasn't the full thing, really together. So I think now is the time we can judge the offensive line, not really based off the past. Decision making and that kind of it could go to Goff a little bit, but coaching decision-making was a problem last year. I know it's a very likable coaching staff, but they blew some games just off coaching alone and decision-making on third down, fourth down, with timeouts, even defensively. Maybe more than anyone, really. It was their first year with that staff. They didn't have the most talent on there, but that's something I'm watching out for. That I keep saying that nobody really talks about that, but it was, it's not even debatable to me. It was the case last year. So we'll see how it is this year, I guess. And consistency kind of goes into that a little bit as well, but maybe in the Goff too. Sometimes Goff looks like, all right, there's that guy that was decent on the Rams, and there's that Goff that no one likes right now. I'm kind of in the middle. I think people probably rip him a little bit too much there, so maybe not in the middle. I don't think we should rip him as much, but yeah, and they're pretty inexperienced all around as well, so maybe that can kind of go into consistency or inconsistency we could have listed. The Falcons, I think it's a unique team. It might be a tough game plan because you got to deal with Mariota running. They got a unique run game with Cordero Patterson. They can run inside, outside, and then you got these lengthy targets. Kyle Pitts. How do we match up with him? Now you throw London into that. It's like you don't normally see those things go together. Like unique run game, speedy quarterback, and then you got these giant targets in the passing game with mismatch nightmares. Really, it's gonna be different. We don't really see that much, so it could be a tough game plan for teams. The offensive line isn't the worst in football, but it might not be far off, so I worry about that. And then Mariota, I believe in for them this year, but is he gonna stretch the ball? Is he gonna push the ball downfield consistently at a decent level? Probably not. Browns at 25, they would be a lot higher if they had Deshaun Watson. They'll get him back at some point, but we're just going into week 1 next week. So run game's real strong, obviously. Offensive line, I like the offensive line as long as it's healthy. But you worry about the QB play, and especially when he doesn't have help at the receiver position. Receivers look brutal right now. After Amari Cooper, and Peoples-Jones is all right, but and if Amari Cooper goes down, which he does miss some time every year, it's real tough there. So it's really gonna be stacked the box. I know Baker didn't play well last year, and the Browns maybe were a little bit better than 25. So you could say, well, Brissett's just got to play in that area of Baker because he didn't play that well. But going into last year, I think people, I don't know if they feared Baker, other teams, but maybe not far off. They're like, all right, we can't just only focus on the run game. I think it started to happen as the year went on, and Baker was playing injured, things like that. But I think going into this year, teams are going to go, all right, we're just going to stack the damn box, so it might be a little bit easier of a game plan for defenses playing against the Cleveland Browns. That run game's tough, though. Even if you stack the box, game plan for it correctly, it could still beat you. So that's the thing with them. Next group of teams go Steelers at 24. They have weapons. Najee Harris, the receivers, even though they lost Juju, they got, a handful of very good receivers. They always got those guys. I like their coaching as well. It's always been pretty solid. Then QB play, I think people are starting to kind of get a little higher, get a little bit more confident right now. I'd say maybe don't fall for that trap yet. Not that I say you definitely shouldn't fall for the trap. Like, I'm not really making a statement that it'll be really bad, but I'm just not going to change my opinion a whole lot. I think Trubisky can be a little bit better than where he was in Chicago, but by how much? That's the question. And the offensive line play is pretty brutal. It's battling the Seattle Seahawks for, in my opinion, the worst in football. So, when Seattle had some injuries. So we'll give the award, not really an award to Seattle at 32, but that's a tough part. Yeah, they have the weapons, though, it's more of the Steelers are just a team that kind of finds a way. They just find a way, so there's nothing sexy about it besides some of those flashy weapons. Deontay Johnson, and Claypool and Pickens could be there. And then it's mainly Deontay Johnson and Najee Harris there. Panthers at 23, which has a shot to be better than this, really. They have weapons. I think they improved quarterback and offensive line play. Coaching, I worry about. It's been a problem in the past. I haven't been a big Ben McAdoo guy either. And then durability, because if Baker if he gets beat up again, starts playing injured, he's not going to play that well like he did last year. If McCaffrey goes down, things like that. I think if anybody goes down the offensive line, because I think they improved their offensive line greatly, but if anybody goes down, the depth is pretty brutal. So kind of I want to like this group too. I really want to like it. I'm kind of rooting for Baker here. It's not that I don't like it. I think there's a lot of good offenses. So if the teams are just ranked down here, doesn't mean I think they're bad. There's just full of offensive talent in the NFL. It's just, I think the coaching's the big one, and durability. I think those are kind of the big ones and where it's going to be at. Patriots, I think, take a step down offensively, even though they could. I could be wrong with that because they could just continue to develop, like guys like Mac Jones, second year. I believe in Mac Jones. I believe in him last year. He played very well last year. I don't really think he takes a step back. But he could develop and take a step up, so therefore the offense takes a step up. I just really worry about the play calling offensively with that situation. It didn't look good in preseason. I don't want to put too much stock in preseason. I never really do, so I don't want to start now. But the vibes I get from teams, I do got to put a little bit of stock into that. It's a strong run game. They're going to rely on that a little bit. And I guess they improved their weapons a little bit, and their offensive line's pretty solid, but they don't really have that kind of takeover talent. Like, is Mac Jones going to take over a game? Probably not. Is that running back group going to take over? I mean, all around it's a pretty good run game, so maybe but there's no star talent for them to be a better offense here. So there's really no that takeover guy. And then the play, again, I talked about the play calling. I do worry about. Washington, I like their run game. I like their weapons, too, especially when they get Brian Robinson back. You have a real good running back room. The receivers are looking pretty good. Adding Dotson, getting Curtis Samuel back. He's got to stay healthy. Already having Scary Terry, obviously, getting Logan Thomas back. Just really inconsistent quarterback play and maybe turnovers because you factor in Wentz's turnover ability and Gibson kind of being the guy right now. Him having fumble issues, I think people are maybe a little too much overblowing that maybe, but it's going to look different because they haven't, I could see it multiple ways, because I talked about in the past. I think Carson Wentz coming in fits the Commanders a little bit better than going into the Colts fitting them. I think he fits the Commanders a little bit better. So Wentz can be pretty decent, Now that no one's expecting it, there were the last few years, like him going to the Colts, there's a group of people like, oh, he's just not that good anymore since the injuries, and there's people who are like, okay, he's going to go back to the old Carson Wentz. He's going back. And then he didn't do that, So I think all those people that were believing in him too much, they disappeared or they changed their opinion. So now no one's believing he's going to go back, and I don't think he's going to go back. But I think that he could get better this year. I could actually see it a little bit there, and that would be interesting. I got the Jags at 20. I like Doug Peterson. Some people don't, I guess, but I like Doug Peterson. I think it's much better coaching, which they lost games on coaching last year. I like the balance they got, and they can pass the ball and they can run the ball. So that's what that means. I'm like even with they have both. They're pretty even with both there. They can do both. They're not lacking in either. I almost put a plus with quarterback play here because I believe in Trevor Lawrence. I think people would have thrown a tantrum if I did that because he didn't play well last year. People always like to base things off the past. And they're not too experienced. New coaching staff, young with the offense, new pieces in there. So that's kind of the thing there. But underrated offense. Dolphins at 19. This is kind of where we take a big step up. I think the top 19 are really good, honestly. The Dolphins, well, maybe we can't say the Dolphins are really good. It kind of depends on the quarterback play. But they have weapons, obviously. They get better with their coaching staff. They have weapons with Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Cedric Wilson, Mike Gesicki, and then the couple running backs that could play, obviously. They're pretty balanced. I think they'll evenly be able to neither are going to be great. Maybe that's what's holding them back a little bit. Do they have great passing attack or great running game? Absolutely not, for neither either. But I think they have some balance in there. An inconsistent quarterback play. To me, I've been one of the guys that, obviously Tua hasn't been good, but I've been one of the guys that have been, it's to be determined. I think people will try to, usually I see a chunk of games from quarterbacks, and I can put a label on them, and I think I'm pretty damn accurate with quarterbacks with that, but I don't want to put a label on Tua yet. I think it's still to be determined on him, and that's kind of rare for me to say that at this point. So it really is, I feel like, to be determined on Tua Tagovailoa. So that him playing a little more consistent, playing better, staying healthy could really boost the Dolphins here. Niners at 18, which is kind of a drop down a little bit than when we've seen them, but there's so many good in the top 18. They have a strong run game, like the coaching. Could expect some inconsistencies in the pass game. Obviously, I think Trey Lance could look pretty good some weeks. I think he'll struggle in the pass game some weeks. It's okay, though, if that happens. It's expected. But this is the worst the interior's offensive line, on paper at least, it's been in some time. I have some real concerns with the interior. I have some concerns with the offensive line in general outside of Trent Williams, but McGlinchey stays healthy. He can hold his own there. But mainly the interior offensive line, which could limit the run game. It's going to be still that Shanahan run game. You have Trey Lance's running ability. You have the running backs. It's still going to be good. It's going to be pretty damn good. But it might not be that maybe the elite type of group that we're used to seeing because of that interior offensive line. And interior pressure is the quickest trip to the quarterback, too, in the passing game. So that could make the job harder for Trey Lance. So that's the tough part. It's a little different. It's the same because we're still Shanahan. We still know that they're going to pound the football, and they're just tough no matter what, but it's different in a way where they might be a little weaker, mainly in the interior offensive line spot, in consistency and different type of style play with Trey Lance there. Saints at 17, they got weapons. You look at the receiver group and then the running back group led by Kamara, and they got balance. It's like this is evenly a rushing and passing attack. You think they got Kamara, they got to be more of a rushing attack, but Kamara's evenly involved in the passing game, a big piece of that passing game. They have all those receivers, so I think they're kind of even on both sides. Durability is a concern. Look at Jameis Winston. I said Jameson Williams. We already talked about him. Jameis Winston, and getting injured last year. Michael Thomas, these guys. And that was kind of the issue last year. Trevor Penning already went down, so that was kind of the issue last year with the team, I should say, in general, the Saints. An inconsistent quarterback play, a little bit of a question because Jameis was starting to look pretty good. Maybe more consistent than he was in the past, but it was such a small sample size before he got injured there. So a little tough. I think if they stay healthy, they're pretty damn good there. We kind of want to see more from Jameis here. But they come in at 17. Again, I think some of these teams we just talked are pretty damn good. It's just that many good ones here. Eagles at 16. It's really just on the quarterback play with the Eagles because it looks like a really good group. They have the top offensive line in football. Debatable, I suppose, but that's where I got them. They have a tough run game that's with Hurts and those running backs. They just added Trey Sermon. That could help a little bit. I think he fits. And they have weapons. They already had some weapons, but now you add A.J. Brown, so you can say that their big positive is weapons now. Inconsistent passing game is what that is that I'm blocking a little bit. It just hurts. He's a little inconsistent, especially with the accuracy down the field. We know he has the arm strength, but there was games last year where it was just very low scoring, and the defense had to hang on, and they kind of did. We had people calling for Gardner Minshew, even in the playoff games. So I think Hurts could take a step up, right? I don't think that'll be the case this year, but how much of a step up, with these weapons? It's really the only thing. And it's a big thing, the quarterback play. He's got to be better there. 15's going to be the Titans. Titans, there isn't really much to go over with them. It's like what you're going to get. You're going to get, and Tannehill, I think, actually is pretty consistent during the regular season. Can he step up into playoff? It's a different conversation, I suppose. But it's a pretty consistent offense. What you're going to get. They're going to pound the ball first. That's the negative. They do rely on the run a bit. Seems a little bit more obvious in the playoffs. But they're going to dominate on the ground. They have maybe the best of football with Derrick Henry. The offensive line could run block. Tannehill can move as well. They're very good with the play action. And they have some weapons, even though they don't have A.J. Brown. Having Robert Woods replace him, Traylon Burke, some other weapons there. Maybe they get better at the tight end position unlike last year. You just know what you're going to get. They're going to be a pretty good team. They're going to be a pretty good offense. It's just one of those teams. It's a little different than the other ones. Colts will be next. Strong run game, kind of just like the Titans. That might be the two kings there with Derrick Henry and Jonathan Taylor. Coaching, and I guess that's debatable because people like to rip Frank Reich I think he's a good game planner on the offensive side. I think he makes guys better on the offensive side there with this system. And they're pretty balanced too, adding Matt Ryan. So they kind of have that. What that means is they kind of have a passing attack and a running attack there. Options in the pass game I think could hurt them. You know, it really feels like Michael Pittman and then some guys. You know, of course, Alec Pierce can be solid. He can step up. You know, if Paris Campbell stays healthy, for an example, they could sign T.Y. Hilton at any time, I suppose. But it just really feels like Michael Pittman carrying a bunch of guys there. How would that affect Matt Ryan, you know, who had Kyle Pitts and Russell? Russell Gage really took off last year. But was it because of Matt Ryan, though? You know, so could Matt Ryan do that for the other guys? Offensive line, I do think it has been very good. I do think it's dropping down a little bit. But I like the balance. I like the coaching. Run game is very strong. And that's the good thing about this year is you know, the team's got the balance. You know, the team's got to worry about the run game and the pass game because they had Matt Ryan in there. It did look a little different, though. They added in some RPO for Carson Wentz last year to take that away. So, different for the better, you'd like to think so. Raiders at 13. I wanted to put the Raiders in the top, easily in the top 10. I think the offensive line, I start to worry about that offensive line. It kind of seems like a problem, which is not normally a problem for the Raiders. I do think it's in the bottom portion of the NFL, so that kind of brings them back a little bit there. They have weapons, though, especially adding Devontae Adams. If Waller stays healthy, they have running backs, obviously. They have Renfro. They got balance because, you know, McDaniel's coming in there. They already had a pretty strong passing attack. Adams coming in there, I should say. They already had a pretty solid passing attack, but then McDaniel's coming in there elevates the run game even further, so it's kind of like it's a little bit of both there, which is great. And Derek Carr's pretty consistent, especially last year. I like that he clutched. I love that he clutched up at the end of the year. I mean, going that Colts game towards the end of the year, because I think that's something Derek Carr hasn't been able to do, really. I think he in the past would look better earlier in the year than end of the year, but I like what he did last year. I consider him a consistent quarterback now. So that offensive line, you know. Cardinals, wish they had Hopkins in the first 6 games, but that passing attack is tough. You know, they run a college spread offense. They'll spread the ball out a bit. They'll pass it all over the place. Obviously, Kyler Murray with his arm strength. We could put in here that they stretch defenses, which I love from teams. They stretch some defenses out. Tough game plan because you got, you know, it's a lot of these defensive coaches are, you know, veteran NFL guys, old school guys, and just dealing with the Cardinals, and it's almost like a college offense, that spread attack, you know, and they're talking about using receivers more too this offseason. Kingsbury was, you know, it's just tough. Then Murray running around, scrambling, it's just tough to deal with, you know, tough to game plan for. Negative, I'd say adjustments, you know, and we see that every year, you know, when teams adjust for them, when they finally have a game plan, because eventually it happens. They're tough to game plan for, so it takes a little bit of time compared to some other basic offenses. Once teams do, they really got them figured out, and there's no adjustments, and that is a collection of coaching and, you know, players adjusting to different looks. You know, you can't expect the same thing, you know, over and over again. I'd say offensive line kind of falls in that because the offensive line always looks pretty good early in the year, then pretty bad at the end of the year. So we'll see what happens there with them. It's a tough passing attack, and they can run the ball with Connor as well. Packers at 11, which maybe takes a little bit step down, especially when we're splitting hairs with these top-tier teams because they don't have Devontae Adams anymore. Obviously, the QB play is great. Run game, I like with the two-headed monster in there, and I think the coaching's pretty solid, even though sometimes I feel like Rodgers and LaFleur aren't really on the same page. Sometimes, not often. Options in the pass game could hurt them, so that could hurt their passing game, which I still think it'll be good because they have Aaron Rodgers. But the options, you know, Adams just took over. I mean, take away Adams for these last couple of years, and you know how much different you start to think about it. Like, it might be pretty different. So it's tough, but it's hard to completely knock them down because they still have Aaron Rodgers and they still have a pretty good group. They might be more of a running attack, which isn't a bad thing because they got a pretty good running attack. And the Vikings at 10, which the Vikings were a weird one because they don't really have like an obvious negative. You know, they don't have, and that kind of sounds like that they maybe should be higher than 10, but maybe they don't have the wow, as much of the wow as some of the teams that we have inside the top 10, inside the top 9, I guess we'll say. But they do have weapons. They got some wow players, Dalvin Cook, Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, you know, players like that. Kirk Cousins has played pretty solid. I think a consistent quarterback, obviously. And they got balance. Like, I mean, they think about it like, you know, they can run the ball with Dalvin Cook, and they had passed the ball better than they ran the ball last year. I mean, they got Kevin O'Connell coming in there. They have those weapons. The offensive line's getting better. So they kind of got all of the above, or do they really wow, and do they have that takeover in it? Maybe that's their negative. But offensive line is night and day different than what it used to be. We were used to being maybe the worst in football, so it is a lot better. But maybe it could be maybe it'll be inconsistent. Maybe it'll have the weeks where it's like it's a young. They played pretty bad. It kind of makes sense. So it's a young offensive line. So Vikings were a weird one on this list, I thought, just because there's no like glaring negatives. So that's a pretty good thing there. Cowboys, which they're the number one. They were number one offense, scoring offense last year, actually, with our yards per game, actually. So that they do take a little bit of a step down here, but I think that's because injuries and losses. Injury Tyrone Smith, and then losses. Amari Cooper, Leo Collins, Connor Williams, guys like that. So, but they do have weapons still. They got the balance. So you look at the running game and the passing game, pretty good in both. Even though people are knocking Zeke, he still runs the ball well. Like they still run the ball well. Dak, pretty good quarterback play, obviously. Production wise, definitely high end. Durability is definitely a concern. We see it in action. I guess you could put coaching in here. There's been some weird decision making, maybe. I think people knock it a little too much, but I understand it if you want to put that as the negative at the same time. So I think the Cowboys offense takes a little bit of a step down production-wise compared to last year. And then we're on to the top 8. I had to hide the top 4 for a second. I got the Broncos at 8. So you pretty much see all positives on this page. I like the balance. Like I don't know what they're going to be better at. That's a good thing. Like they're better at passing. I think most people would say passing because they have Russell Wilson. They have some weapons. And I can see it, but that rushing attack could be pretty damn good with Javonte Williams, Melvin Gordon. I'm a big Javonte Williams fan. I think I could see a scenario where he leads the NFL in rushing yards. I could see it. So love the balance there. And then they got that QB play, which we kind of look for with all these teams. I want to see if they got it or not. They got it there. Russell Wilson just got his big extension, this morning. Just see how he is after last year. With a different team coming off that injury, I'm confident, but I guess maybe a little bit in there that's to be determined. Durability, mainly the receivers, and we already seen Tim Patrick go down. You've seen that Sutton had injuries in the past. Judy last year, Hamler last year, so you kind of see it that some of these guys, and I wouldn't put Wilson under durability issues because it was kind of just the last year thing, and he came back earlier than expected, but it's something to kind of monitor, I suppose. I put the Ravens at 7. They were kind of middle of the pack last year, and that's why they were really beat up. Then they get Lamar Jackson back. They get J.K. Dobbins back. The offensive line's better. Receiver unit, even though it's lacking right now, it could actually be better. Bateman stepping up. They have the tight ends. They add Likely in there. They have Mark Andrews. Really tough game plan trying to deal with Lamar Jackson. It's just really, because you're playing every single week, it's just so much different than what you played the previous week, what you have to game plan for the week after, so it's just so freaking tough. The run game is elite. It's top tier. And the QB play is it's a different type of dominant QB play, but it's dominant QB play there. So Ravens are 7. I guess I should have put just a mistake with the graphics. Durability definitely should be just like the Broncos. They should be on the same page there, the negative. So that's why my videos is mainly what I say. Kind of the graphics are there just, I guess, for the people that skim through, which I wouldn't recommend that. But I got the Bengals at 6. They have the weapons. I love the balance, too, because they could beat you at the pass or the run. So, teams had to worry about all those receivers last year, especially deep downfield, but they're like, damn, they can run with Mixon as well. Like, what do we do here? So, love the balance on the Bengals and QB play. Joe Burrow only getting better. Big reason why they were able to get to the Super Bowl last year. Again, he's only getting better, so that's a scary thing. Negative, you could put offensive line play, but I like to think they made it better. So we'll see, I guess, to be determined, because they made it better on paper. Sometimes you think it, because on paper it looks better. You think they made it better. They didn't actually. So I guess we'll see if that ends up being a negative for them this year. It's not going to be great, so it's not like it got to that point, where it went from worst to first. But Chargers at 5. Love the way they stretch defenses, with Herbert's arm, but they got deep ball receivers. They also have, Keenan Allen does a lot of work underneath as well from the slot. And they have Eckler, who's a phenomenal pass-catching running back out into the flat. So it just really stretches horizontal, vertically, just stretches the defense because of all of the things I just explained. And that is just so tough for defenses. QB play, I'm a big fan of Justin Herbert. He has wowed me quite a bit. He's only going to get better, and they have the weapons. Obviously, we just discussed all the weapons pretty much there. One, I guess, negative that it's to be determined. Last year, it felt like the offense didn't feel like the offense when they played top-tier defensive game planners. Not really top-tier defenses, top-tier defensive game planners. Examples would be Patriots and Ravens. They figured out how to game plan against them, and they just did not seem like the same offense. And I'm not really... some people would say, well, that the fourth down decisions, I don't really mind them. I think if they would have worked, everyone would have been like, yes, like that. This Brandon Staley is great, and they're very close to working. I mean, there was a couple decisions where I was like, yeah, it was kind of a stupid decision, but it wasn't. There's some teams where even if they convert them, like it's a stupid decision. I never really thought that with the Chargers. A couple times again, but as a whole, I was never like, yeah, they're more making stupid decisions than not. It's just they weren't converting them. That's more what it was. They had a lot of mistakes that I don't think they'll make this year. Penalties that cost them red zone yardage, touchdowns, drops that caused same thing, resulted in that. So I think it'll all be better this year. So I got them at 5. I was very close to putting at 4, but I felt a little more comfortable putting the Rams there. Matthew Stafford going into the second year, thinking that he can get more chemistry, get better with this group. Second year here. Great coaching, obviously, they're proven, and they have their weapons as well, led by Cooper Kupp. And they got Cam Akers full-time, we would like to think there, hopefully, which kind of could create some balance, but they are mainly a pass team there. I got the Bucs at 3. They got Brady. Obviously, they got the QB play. They have the weapons. I mean, so many weapons at the receiver position, but Leonard Fournette's been a stud for them at the running back position as well. And again, I like the balance. They can run. They can beat you with the run too. It's pretty crazy because people got to be going in game planning for Tom Brady, throwing the ball downfield, but they can beat you in the Fournette game as well. I got the Chiefs at 2. It was back and forth, the Chiefs and the Bills. I got the Chiefs at 2. Patrick Mahomes, arguably the best in football. Obviously, love that offensive line. I think it's top-tier elite, and it was just kind of formed last year. It's a crazy thing. They stretch defenses, Mahomes with his arms, but I think the coaching kind of goes into that with the play designs and the options that they have. You got to worry about, Kelsey here. And Edwards-Helaire's got to stay healthy, but he's a pretty good pass-catching back that can really help stretch the defense as well, believe it or not. The coaching's just so great. But the Bills are 1, and they have some of the same things, QB play, weapons. But I think the main thing is they stretch defenses as well. But they do it in I think with Josh Allen's running game, I think they do it with that way as well as like a bonus because they have the vertical. He has the deep ball, and they have the vertical threat receivers. They also, Diggs can do everything. He can go underneath. These guys can do everything. And then they add James Cook, who's a phenomenal pass catching back. He can run deep. He can run underneath. So that helps stretch the defense. But then you got Josh Allen running too, like taking off. Like, all right, it's a pass first team, for sure. They have the deep ball, but it's got to worry about this quarterback running all over the place. It's just like, breaking tackles even. It's just, I think that's the difference, and it just makes it such a tough game plan, dealing with that, what I just said. So and that is the reason I put Bills 1 is more the how they stretch the defenses and then how that goes into a very tough game plan. So that's why I put them 1. I don't think they were 1 last year. Maybe at the end of the day they could have been, but they had their hiccups last year, so I think this is more of a prediction on where they're going to get to this year. But a lot of these teams are debatable in the top. I was pretty right away when I started doing this. I put the 5 teams I listed the top 5 with the 5 teams I have now, not in the no order. I kind of just right away I knew those are going to be my 5 teams there. So I think you kind of can flip flop most of those in any order. So let me know your guys' rankings, and I'm sure you don't want to type all 32, but in the comments you want to type 5, 10, 3, whatever it may be. I'll do the same thing with defenses here. Yeah, and the important thing is that just because if your team's ranked lower, like in the 20s, whatever, doesn't mean I think they're bad. I think there's a lot of good talent in the NFL. It's a good time to be alive. Good time to watch today's NFL because it's crazy how good the talent is here. But that's going to wrap up this one. Again, we'll get the defensive video. We'll get my final season predictions. And then next week, we'll go into our in-season content, very first power rankings of the 2022 season. We'll have our pick 'em, score predictions, and more. Join us, like, subscribe, turn notifications on, follow us on Twitter. Link down below for that. A lot of useful links down there in the comments and description. Check it out. It's going to do it. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.